I am your host, Willa White, and this is my weekly podcast show that airs on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern on my Facebook page, Willa White Medium. That's also one of my sponsors is the Lilydale Assembly, so it goes out on their Facebook page. You can also find this later on my YouTube channel, and this is year 8 of episodes. So you can certainly look back at the archive videos of the show and enjoy, and many people tell me that they binge watch the show. You can do that to your heart's content. I've had so many great guests and topics over the years, so I encourage you to learn and educate yourself. Usually the topics have to do with spiritualism, mediumship, healing, faith, family, and more. And you can like, share, subscribe, all those good things so that you can keep more of these shows coming to you directly so that you can learn more about yourself and about your soul and how we interact with others as souls. And I just have a few announcements. The Lilydale summer season is going to be here before you know it, before we know it. And the opening day is June 20th. There are lots of wonderful workshop programs that you can attend, daily events, lectures, healing services. So you can find more information about that on the lilydaleassembly.org website. I do have, for the month of February, a video learning series, which can be really helpful for you, that you can have instant viewing to certain class videos I have done in the past. And part of this February video learning series, I have coping strategies for empaths. So if you're really wanting to have some great information and strategies for empowering your journey as an empath, as an intuitive, as a healer or a medium, that could be a great video for you, as well as symbol interpretation. So many people, they don't understand the messages that are coming to them through the form of symbols and even in dream interpretation. And so that's helpful in that regard. And then the third one that's part of this video series is connecting with your spiritual support team, which is so very important to know how we're connected to the various team members, angels and spirit guides and many others. So that details it for you. And with each one of the classes, there are bonus handouts that come with it. So you can have video access for the whole month of February. You can find more information about that on my website, willawhite.com. All right, we're going to get on with our topic for today, which is spiritual emergence and mental health. This is such an important topic. And part of being involved with the spiritual community is that we come across that ourselves and know other people that have had to really discover those aspects and get that defined for them. I have with us here today, back on the show, Dr. Brenda Hawkins, and she's a retired psychologist as well as being a registered Lilydale medium currently. And we're so grateful that she could come on the show and explore this topic with us today. Thanks for being here today, Brenda.
Thanks, Will. It's good to be with you today.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I've been really excited about when I think about this particular episode, we're going to be talking about what is spiritual emergence and really sorting through what is psychosis, what's imagination, and what's true spiritual experience. And that includes spirit contact with loved ones who have passed. So we're going to really break that down for people and help them to better understand how they can apply this learning to their experiences and really understand going forward. So how about we start with spiritual emergence? What does that even mean? For some people who are like, what does that even mean?
Okay, spiritual emergence is a process in which we start spiritually reawakening. Okay, and it seems to be almost like a cyclical process that we go through throughout our lives. It's kind of like in a spiral. It's not like we start out at one point and then we get to the end point and then we just sit around. Okay. So we're always learning. Spirit is always giving us opportunities to learn and develop. And So anyway, I find that a very useful concept for talking about spiritual emergence and awakening is the Hindu concept of the Kundalini, which, to put it in everyday terms, basically it's a kind of like a little pile of energy, you might say, that resides at the base of the spine. And when we go through personal development as well as spiritual emergence, it's like that energy starts to rise and it goes through the different chakras, the different energy centers of the body.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as it rises, okay, because our bodies do carry our learning, we talk about cellular memory. And so we carry both the positive memories in different parts of our bodies and also the traumatic or challenging memories that we have. And so as that energy comes up, okay, it's going to, of course, encounter the energy, you might call it the residue, okay, of those experiences, because that's still there to be healed and cleansed so that then the sorry, my cats have the zoomies right now. If you hear anything strange off screen, that's
any chains clinking. No, it's the cats.
Spirit, it's the cats.
Yes. Yes.
So anyway, spirit will kind of activate that residue because that needs to be healed, resolved, and worked with. And then as we get those issues resolved, then the energy is able to flow up the spine, okay, almost like water going through a faucet after the faucet has been cleared. And you start getting the good clean water instead of the sludgy type water.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
All that sediment is gone.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you've ever been out on a farm where they have like an outdoor water pump, you'll know how you have to kind of crank it a while before, to get the sludgy stuff out, before you get the good clean water.
Yeah. So symbolically speaking, that it could be like that when we're first entering into, in a conscious way.
Right.
The spiritual experiences.
Exactly. That's why we can experience so many things. Issues will come up for us. And it's so important to get the good resources and the help and the consultation that we may be needing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where knowing the difference between physical issues and energy issues, okay, the difference between those, okay. For example, when the energy goes up through the heart chakra and you're having pains there, okay, is this a heart attack? Is it an angina? Or is this spirit working? And so, excuse me, I always recommend get some medical input first, okay? Because you don't want to be unconsciously or erroneously thinking you're having some spirit work going on when it's actually a heart attack. Okay, always take care of the physical things first, rule those out.
I tell my students that before they do the work, before you do readings and message for that day, you need to get a baseline of what's you, what is yours, so that any new information that's coming on board during a reading or spirit message, that it's spirit.
Right.
You want to have that clarity so that it can come through as a pure channel, but you have to also do that work within yourself. And so, yes, get to a medical professional if you need to.
Exactly. And take care of that stuff if it needs taken care of. Get it ruled out if it's not physical. Okay. Because, like one of my clinical supervisors used to say, good diagnosis is half of the job, because then you know what to do.
Yes, exactly.
And that's true of medical things, psychological things, and spiritual things.
Yeah. And just so people have an even better background, for you, Dr. Brenda Hawkins, you as a retired psychologist, you worked in the field, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then you've also taught at university college level,
Mm-hmm.
helping others who are interested in psychology and having counseling practices, how to do this effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And so just so everybody knows, Brenda's coming from that voice of experience and also helping others to help patients understand spiritual emergence and what's the difference between the physical and mental health. So
For sure. That's crucial.
it is
That's
crucial.
crucial. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's such a big area.
It is such a big area, and when people are sensitive, if they're empathic, if they're clairsentient, they're more likely to feel things, and so
Mm-hmm.
you feel it as if it was your own. Like all of
Right.
a sudden, whoa, there was a stroke, and oh, my knee, like all those things start
Right.
to happen. So yes, it's a good aspect from the physical. And
Mm-hmm.
moving into the energetics of this, because you start to almost feel like you're being played like an instrument
Mm-hmm.
when spiritual experiences start to percolate in you until you have a better system of understanding. And so would it be time now to talk about the difference between the psychosis, the
Mm-hmm.
imagination, and true experience with that?
For sure. For sure. Yeah. You'll hear mediums talk about how they see a certain person and they're wearing this or they have that going on or whatever. Okay. Typically, when you're getting it spiritually, you'll see it in your mind's eye. And it's similar to like when somebody's giving you directions or you're giving somebody else directions and you're visualizing that path inside
Mhm,
your mind. You're not seeing it externally.
mhm,
With things like the psychotic disorders, okay, different types of schizophrenia or another disorder that has psychotic features, that person may see things externally.
mhm,
Okay. For example, a medium would see, say, for example, a short gentleman wearing uh, a brown fedora and walking with a cane. Okay.
mhm.
And he or she would see that with their mind's eye. Somebody who is having a hallucination would say, there's a short man over there in that corner, and he's wearing this hat, and he has a cane or a stick, and he's staring at me. And
Hmm.
and hallucinations and also delusions of and psychotic disorders tend to be controlling. They tend to be negativistic, whereas spirit is always positive, and they give you things to work with.
I would agree with it being positive. I do feel that it's possible for folks to have a objective clairvoyance where they
Mm-hmm.
do see it outside of themselves because they can access that dimensional fabric, shall we say, of that
Mm-hmm.
energy.
Yeah.
So you can have an internal mind's eye experience, but I do feel you can see it outside of you
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. You can get
Yeah.
a sense of spirit as standing next to a client or next to a
Exactly.
message recipient and have that. But I guess just to really clarify for our viewers today that when it's in the schizophrenia category,
Mm-hmm.
that it tends to have like this spooky
Yeah, negativistic kind of thing because
negative,
it's about unresolved issues and
right.
also chemical imbalances in the brain. Okay, there can be an imbalance with the dopamine in the
Mhm,
brain,
mhm,
whereas mediums don't have that.
mhm,
Okay, so that's a very objective measure. Okay,
mhm, mhm,
and sometimes you can even okay, when you're a medium, the line between internal and external can become so thin,
mhm.
almost like the way you can see through real thin fabric or paper, that,
Yes.
yeah, it may initially come internally, but then it's easy to see it externally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
I tend to talk with my hands.
Yeah, it's fine. I do too. And I teach my students what I call the sonar ping, and you can really get a sense when you're taking the energy out where spirit is in the space around you, and it becomes more discernible. Even if you're strongly clairsentient, you can actually see by feeling. Starts to activate those clairvoyant senses as well. So it's kind of exciting how that works. But it is having not had the psychosis, I can't tell you from like personal experience the difference. But you having dealt with people who are seeing things that are external to them, or maybe hearing the voices. Maybe we should talk about the hearing of the voices too. The difference of what is spirit clairaudience and what is the hearing of voices that's associated with psychosis. How would you make that distinction?
Okay, with the auditory hallucinations that we have in psychosis, okay, again, it's repetitive, it's negativistic, it's very typically judgmental, criticizing of the person.
Okay.
The person feels disempowered. Okay, there's suffering attached with it too. Okay, because for any of us, even non-psychotic people, it can feel hurtful if somebody gives you some really harsh, negative input, as opposed to constructive feedback. Okay. Sure. Yeah. But with psychosis, okay, it's coming from their own issues, and it's not coming from spirit. Okay, because spirit does lift up, it instructs, it can give us awarenesses, insight, perspective that benefits us. Whereas with psychosis, it's a tearing down, it's a negative thing. Okay. So yeah, that's what we call an auditory hallucination.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to clairaudience, spirit communication, typically when we experience clairaudience, we're getting it just above the actual physical ears. It's rare that we would hear it with our physical ears. We feel it in those audio receptor sites of the brain. Sometimes it's stereo, as it were, when spirit is talking with us. And it's just really neat to know that it activates productively in that way when people are working with clairaudience. And from what I'm hearing you say is that when it comes to seeing and hearing, that it really, the intent is what matters. The intent of what you are perceiving, the entity you think you're perceiving, when you're in a psychosis state, would be that the right phrase. Then if it's in negative context that is making you feel horrible and bad, all of those things, that's why we would relegate it to that bucket. But if it's uplifting and say, I'm here to talk to my daughter, we may have had some negative situations, but I'm here to come forward in an uplifting way to buoy her up in life, then that would be spirit contact. So that's the hard and fast rule, is what I'm hearing you say.
Right. And plus, spirit can also give us music.
Yeah, music too.
Yeah, like if there's a loved one that you have on the other side and they had a favorite song, or there was a song that the two of you shared together, you might suddenly, just out of the blue, you're not thinking about that person. You're stirring your oatmeal in the morning, whatever. And suddenly you hear this old song from the 1940s, just as loud as you might hear the stereo. Okay. And it makes you think of that person. It's like, oh, okay, that's mom. She's saying hi now. Okay. Yeah.
If anybody is watching this today or on the replay and wants to share some of their beautiful experiences of seeing and hearing please feel free to share that in the chat. I think it's nice to know that other people are connecting with spirit productively and easily, and that you started to learn the difference between those things for yourself.
That's such an important point.
It is. It is. Is there another aspect of psychosis that you feel we should cover with this? We talked about the seeing and the hearing, but are there other ways that can manifest?
There is a disorder. It's not grouped under the psychotic disorders, but there's a disorder called Munchausen syndrome.
Oh,
yeah,
I've heard of that.
And it's it can seem in everyday life similar to hypochondriasis. Okay,
that's a word.
Hypochondria.
Okay. Oh, okay.
yeah, hypochondria. Maybe I'm channeling one of my professors. I don't know.
That's great. I love it. Go for it.
Usually I keep things pretty simple. So anyway, yeah, so it's different from hypochondria. Okay, with hypochondria, it can be kind of like the worried well. Okay, and again, it's always important to get medical input. Okay, get an evaluation. You know, if you're worried about maybe having some sort of disorder, some sort of disease, you know, gee, I'm having pains in my chest, you know, I'm going to die from a heart attack. I just know it. Okay. Go to a doctor, get yourself checked out. Okay. And get some objective input from someone who, you know, knows that area.
Yes. Okay. I think that's important. And although I will tell you, when clairsentience was really coming on with me strong, when I first started in mediumship development circles, I felt like I was having a heart attack.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm too young. I'm like 18, 19 years old. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, wait, that's just spirit. So I was able to quickly make that distinction. And I tell my students that you only allow yourself to feel that for 2 to 3 seconds at the most. Anything longer than that starts to really hurt. So you kick that to the curb because you need new information from the spirit communicator anyway. So you have to energetically have healthy boundaries, which is what I talked about in that coping strategies for empaths class. But the idea of understanding how you are in charge of your own energy.
Exactly.
So getting education and putting those kind of things into practice, those techniques, is crucial for someone who is in spiritual emergence. As far as
exactly. Yeah, with sensations that are coming from spirit, like you were saying, it lasts for only a few moments.
That's right.
Just enough to get the point across. Okay.
Right. And then once as a medium, once I give that out, it goes away. Once the client understands, I'm like, it's gone. He or she got the point. So we're free of that.
Whereas with a heart attack, okay, that typically lasts 15 to 20 minutes. Okay. You have the difficulty with the breathing. You may already have a pre-existing condition like high blood pressure, high LDL, okay, high bad cholesterol. Okay. Yeah. So again, always get things checked out.
I do see a question that's come through. We'll just touch on this briefly and then move into some of the other aspects we were going to cover today. But the question is there a risk of manipulation by earthbound spirits? That is, I have heard of negative spirits providing positives to gain credibility to manipulate. And I have to say earthbound spirits, in my opinion, are very rare. What you're usually connecting in with is the energy residue that's left behind. And which is, another reason you want to have energetic, healthy boundaries so that you can tune yourself to the positive radio stations about that. But I can't wait to hear what Brenda has to say.
From my own experience and from what I've, learned and studied, okay, You know how water always flows downhill? Okay, it's a thing of nature.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, spirit is of nature also. Okay, there's natural law. So when we cross over into the other side. Okay, it's like water flowing downhill. Okay, or it's like gravity on the earth plane, that kind of thing. Okay, it's a natural law. So there aren't earthbound spirits. Now, spirit can come visit us on the earth plane, okay, but they're not stuck here, okay? They don't live here. This may be a nice place to visit, but they have other places where they live.
That's
Okay?
right. They're just visiting.
They're
But
just visiting, yeah.
that negative spirit that people might be picking up, I feel strongly is energy residue.
It can be energy residue. It can also be non-conscious issues inside the person, maybe some old programming, like old religious programming that may have been very judgmental in the past,
Mm-hmm.
or based in some old trauma. I've worked a lot with trauma survivors and abuse survivors, and there can be energy residue, with the negative stuff that has happened.
Right. And part of mediumship development means that you're also understanding that you are involved in your own spiritual unfoldment.
Mm-hmm.
And that does take energy work to
does.
work, to maneuver and navigate through those things. And keep in mind that as mediums, when we do things with right intention and right practice, that
Mm-hmm.
means that we're only allowing those in spirit to come in for the duration of the message or the duration of the reading for that purpose of upliftment and bringing through a message. And that the rest of the time, nope. Your spirit team will assist, in fact,
Mm-hmm.
in keeping spirit at bay, that they have to kind of have an appointment to come through, and, that you are not just pushed from pillar to post by spirit. We want you to navigate this and know that things can unfold in a positive light. And I think that's the big difference about making sure that you do fine tune your mediumship and educate that in an arena where those are the thoughts that can help you to develop without the negative connections, connotations. I'm not saying that I don't talk occasionally to somebody who used to be really negative here, the earth plane, but through spiritual progression, being in infinite and eternal, they can progress. But also my spirit team does a great job of buffering that.
Mm-hmm.
It really doesn't have to be something that's harmful.
Right. It's important for us to know that we are the drivers of our own cars, so to speak.
Yes.
Okay, to use that as an analogy. And we're the caretakers of our homes. We don't leave our front door open and unlocked all the time for just anybody to come walking in.
Mm-hmm.
We do shut and lock our doors. It's important to have boundaries also, psychological boundaries, emotional boundaries, and spiritual boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And having that is crucial in the development of a sensitive, of a healer, of a medium, so that you can effectively navigate your life and have good balance.
And see, spirit wants to be positive. They want to be a constructive energy, because it does take energy for them to cross the dimensions and communicate with us.
Right.
And so they want it to be good. And so, it's okay to say, hey, not now.
I do think, to spend couple more seconds on that question, that I've never felt at risk of manipulation by anyone in spirit. Personally, I've never felt that I would be brought under by anything like that, or if I felt like spirit was like kind of like, hey, I'll be like, come back at such and such a time, and I'll sit in meditation, and we can talk, and then you can kind of gauge whether you want to talk to them further. But having those kind of healthy boundaries is important. So I've noticed that as I've developed as a medium, I have had healthier boundaries with the living people in my life too. So
Yeah.
as you're developing that, so that you don't feel so out of control, because as a sensitive, when you are interacting with the living, it can be very overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Like, holy cow. Like, I remember when I first was starting in school, and through much of it, I could feel the bombardment of other people's thoughts, and like they came from weird family things that were going on, and it was hard for me at first to handle that. But then you learn to buffer energy, and that's a really important thing as you're working through the spiritual immersions.
Right. And spirit is very open to us saying, hey, not now.
That's
Because
right.
again, they want the best for us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they also have good boundaries themselves. So they're not wanting to jump in and read our minds, against our consent or anything.
That's
So,
right.
so they may make themselves known. And if it's not an okay time, you can say, hey, not now. And that can make it easier to set boundaries with people who are still in the body on the earth plane, because spirit is actually easier to set boundaries with.
That's right. Like, so I do see this, no denying the delusional parts, but would also like a conversation about other options isn't wrong, or is it? I don't know quite what that means, but in this particular viewer's case, a family member had some good psych care, but they never recognized other or extra options beyond the problems that were emerging with schizoaffective disorder, because I guess she could never get him to tell me about the voices, but she always thought that of him being clairaudient. So,
Okay, yeah, that brings up another complex kind of thing without my having done chart review with this person.
sure.
Okay, because that's an important caveat right there.
Yeah.
Okay. I have not done chart review. Okay, but you can have something going on psychologically, and you can also have something going on spiritually. Okay.
Okay.
Just like someone can have a psychological disorder and also have an addictive disorder. Okay. We call that dual diagnosis. Okay.
Right.
So, yeah, just because you have one disorder, psychological disorder, doesn't mean that you're not developing spiritually. Okay, but you do need to get the resources to work with the psychological disorder. Again, remember the Kundalini, getting that good clean water, okay, the good clean input. You want to really resolve your psychological stuff. A more common example is people who are depressed. They may have major depressive disorder or maybe seasonal affective disorder. A lot of people are feeling down in the dumps right now. Also, some people are having reactive depression due to national events. Okay, there are all sorts of things because we do live in the world too. Okay,
Yes.
so you have to kind of sort out, okay, what is depression? What is spiritual opening? Because when you're at the beginning of spiritual emergence, one of the things that you might experience is a feeling of dread or doom. Okay. But that resolves on its own as you work with meditation, affirmation, working with your connection with spirit.
And be consistent with it too, because that's
consistent. Yeah.
Yeah.
And know too that there are many different types of ways to meditate. If one doesn't work for you, then try another one, and be patient with yourself and gentle with yourself. Okay. Because in this, we're trained to always be multitasking and aware of all sorts of things at the same time. And with meditation, you have to kind of gear down, focus on what you're breathing, or looking at a candle or a rose, or even walking out in nature can be a meditation.
True.
Okay. Or yoga. There can be movement types of meditation. So you have to try things on, see how they fit. Okay. But you do have to be consistent.
And you'll go through different phases as you're
Mhm.
evolving this. You'll find what works for you, and then another thing that might work better during another phase. And so you work with the energy and your spiritual support team with all of that. And I think it'd be good to shift into imagination.
Yeah.
Between imagination and a true spiritual experience.
And in fact, you can use imagination as a step to spirit.
That's what I tell my students all the time. I'll say, intuition utilizes imagination, right?
Right.
Because they live in the same house.
They do.
And so intuition says, hey, help me work with this. So initially, it may even feel a little bit like you're imagining it. Because that it's coming from that same space. But then you start to discern the difference.
Right.
So let's talk about that, discerning the difference.
The analogy that I think of when it comes to imagination and spiritual input is to imagine the keys on a piano. Because, with spirit, we talk about vibration, and sound is vibration. So I like to think about the keys of a piano, and imagination may lie on one part of the keyboard, and we work our way up. We're playing the song, and then we may wind up with a few notes up in this upper register where spirit might be. And then we go back to the imagination part. Then we may wind up going out to the other again. And, mediums can use their imagination also. We all know about some mediums who are very gifted artists.
Yes, we do.
and mediums who are gifted poets or writers. Yeah. And I know in doing psychotherapy with people, you have to be sometimes imaginative when you're thinking, okay, what intervention is needed right now for this person? Yeah. So anyway, but yet you still have to be able to justify it clinically.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned that the keyboard.
Yes, the keyboard.
Yeah, it's all vibration.
And so when it comes to imagination, accessing that, I think is helpful when we think in terms of creative force. Creative force, like capital C, capital F.
Right.
The divine understanding source of all. And the creative force works upon the vibration of the medium.
Right.
To convey information and conversation, the physical appearance, the personality, how they react to things, the health, wellness, death, possibly the career, their hobbies, their special interests that they have, the relationship they have with a client or message recipient, and other very surprising things. And so we have to kind of be in a playful mode of connection with that information so that there's a relaxed understanding of, hey, we're going to just talk and see what happens. And you have to open yourself up to that which is the good, knowing that you're supported. And I feel it so much that I know the difference between my own thoughts and spirit thoughts, because over time you start to learn that. So for me, I think when I talk to people about this distinction, it's like you have to practice both to start to get discern the difference. Would you agree with that?
For sure. Yeah. The more practice, the better.
Yeah. So because a lot of times a spirit will tell me something about themselves or about the client, and I'll be like, are you sure? Because like if I were to judge the book by its cover, the client, I'd be like, nah. So that's how a lot of times I could discern the difference, because my mind doesn't work the way that person in spirit works. That
exactly.
I think when you start, you can notice similarities. A lot of mediumship and a lot of life is about understanding patterns. and the vibrational patterns of someone else and the distinctions of that, and how are they different in the way they voice something, and what stands out to you about that. It's like when you meet a person for the first time, what do you notice about them first? Do you notice their eyes or their smile, or none of that? Do you just remember their energy?
Yeah.
So you have to think in terms of what you're noticing first, and your imagination will kind of take you on to more of making up your own little story about something. Right. But when you're in a mediumship reading, you're getting confirmation from the client. You're getting confirmation from the message recipient that, yes, they understand this information from this spirit loved one to be true.
Right. It's, as I'm kind of playing with ideas here, it's kind of like imagination. When we use our imaginations, we have a jumping off point that comes from within our own realm of experience, and then we can take off from there, whereas spirit may bring us something in suddenly that we never would have thought of in a gazillion years.
Right.
Okay? Yeah, good example of that. One time I was doing a reading for someone, and suddenly I saw this pig standing in between us wearing a pink tutu.
Uh-oh. What's wrong with Brenda?
Right. Yeah. It's like I never would have thought of that in a million years. And so anyway, another important thing too is the issue of non-attachment. Don't get attached to anything. So I just kind of acknowledged to myself, okay, this is what I'm seeing. And I continued working with the person, and the pig stayed there and stayed there. So finally I said to her, this may sound strange, but I have a pig here standing in between the two of us wearing a pink tutu. And I heard her gasp, and she said, oh, that's so-and-so. That was my pet pig. She's the one I wanted to connect with. And I always dressed her up in a pink tutu. Like, oh.
Yeah.
And see, that's something I never would have imagined.
Yeah.
So you can see right there the difference between imagination and actual getting input from spirit. Yeah.
Very much so.
I'll always remember that to my dying day.
Of course. and part of learning as a medium, as you develop, is being able to take the risk to say, I see a pig, a pig in a pink tutu. I mean, people might think that there's something wrong with you, but in that context, when you're accessing that communication with spirit, they give you those kind of wild cards.
They do.
It's so great. It's so great. Any other thoughts of making that distinction between imagination and spiritual experiences? Because it's a big thing. A lot of student mediums, they're like, I can't tell the difference between my thoughts and spirits. And again, a lot of that's just plain old practice, but also like testing. I'm not saying you rush the electric fence about this, but when I say to spirit, what do you think about such and such? And they might throw something out. I'm like, really? And I'll run it past the client, and they'll be like, yeah. And so if it goes against how you would have thought about something, and especially if you have those kind of, and not throughout, but like some moments where that happens, don't think that you shouldn't give it out. Imagination, I feel, is very, very useful. It's a tool for your intuition. We don't want to get rid of imagination. We want to foster that. But we're also, with our intuition, and especially as you're conveying things as a medium, we have to engage our left brain as well, that rational mind that helps us to find the right words to express what we are seeing or experiencing or feeling and knowing during those times. So we have to, again, that's only through practice. Is there any other way you can think of that could get to discern the difference?
Well, related to that, And yes, practice is really important. And that's where home circles come in. The spiritualist tradition of doing home circles, getting together with people that you know well, that you trust, who are also working on their own spiritual journeys too. And you practice with each other, you give each other feedback, which means you have to feel really safe and trusting with these people. Because they're going to be kind of like a mirror for you, so you can see what you're doing and what you're not doing and what you might be needing to change, or to recognize things that you might discount. Okay. And I just thought of a really good example of that. You were there at the time in Judith's class.
Yes, in that whole circle.
Yeah. And
Brenda and I used to go to that one together.
Yeah, we used to go to that one. And there was a gentleman in the class too, and we were doing a meditation. And when he was asked what he had gotten, he says, "I just keep getting this dog saying, 'I'm a lady, I'm a lady.'" And this was after my rescued Shetland sheepdog had passed away, and her formal AKC name was Beckward Kelsey is a lady. But he was just about to discount it.
Yeah.
He was saying, there's just this dog walking around the circle, and her being a Shetland sheepdog. And I've seen her do this with circles of people before. She would get up and walk around in a circle because that's what Shelties do. They're herding dogs.
Right.
Yeah. But he just shook his head. And he says, "I just keep seeing this dog who's walking around in a circle saying, 'I'm a lady, I'm a lady.'"
And it had such great meaning to you, which is very
It couldn't have been more evidential to me.
Yes. And I think what's also difficult, though, for a student is we get as a student, you get those hits and you're like, "Oh, awesome. I can't believe that worked." I can't believe it understood. And then you hit a moment and nobody can take the message, or it doesn't make any sense. And, so then you're like, was that my imagination? And how was that taking hold and making up a story in not really having spirit delivering that?
Yeah, it's real good to have that reflection of, kind of like critiquing ourselves and saying, okay, what feels right, what doesn't feel right, and questioning ourselves. That's very healthy to do. At the same time, we have to practice what the Buddhists call detachment. Okay, we have to let go of that. We've given that to the person, and now it's theirs to work with. It's not ours. Okay? And a good example of that, and this is a reading I received from a medium in Atlanta back when I was living in Atlanta. She said, "I see you moving to upstate New York near a lake with the big E in the name." And I'm thinking, okay, maybe she's, getting this from, maybe this is a message for one of my clients or patients in therapy. I don't know, because I had just moved down from Fredonia. Okay. And I just bought a house that I was planning to retire in, beautiful, really nice house. And plus the cold and I don't get along real well. Okay. So I thought, okay, I don't know what this is about. And then fast forward, and I kept the tape, but I didn't label it. But fast forward 10 years later, I'm in Fredonia, unpacking my boxes in this apartment. I come near this unlabeled tape. So I put the tape in, and I hear her voice saying, "I see you moving up to upstate New York, near a lake with a big E in the name."
And you're like,
yeah, it took 10 years for that to come about.
And the forehead left behind.
It was kind of like that V8 moment. Wow, I could have had a V8. Oh, yeah, that's what that was about.
Some things are for later, and that's just how that can be as well. I do see a question that's come through. One of the viewers had an episode of substance-induced mania from taking Ozempic, in her case, and it brought on a spiritual awakening. Now that I'm recovered, I still have worries that it's my imagination when I make connections. Any advice on trust and surrendering, given my experience?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, great question. Yeah, because sometimes medical situations can trigger a spiritual awakening, whether it's a reaction to medication or a near-death experience or whatever. Okay. Again, always make sure you're having good medical care. That's your foundation. Okay, first things first. And then use your resources. I'm thinking about the Spiritual Emergence Network. Okay, they have a network of people who are licensed, who are trained, experienced nationwide. They will give free referrals. Okay, you can call them and talk to them and get some help, some input, some feedback, and maybe get hooked up with a therapist or a counselor or consultant who is trained in both areas and can work with both areas.
I think that that's it is a good time to mention that because with spiritual emergence, sometimes it's helpful if you have someone who can guide you, and especially if you're they as from their website they say individuals experiencing psycho-spiritual difficulties in a culture which has not understood issues surrounding spiritual development. The gift of being heard and understood by a knowledgeable and supportive listener can be life altering. And for people who are interested in that and in connecting with them, it's the Spiritual Emergence Network. You can find it online. It's spiritualemergence.org. And they have a referral support service.
And they've been around for decades. I was connected with them, oh God, was it the 1980s or 90s? At this stage in life, a whole decade goes by like that, you know. But yeah, the gist of what I'm trying to say is that they've been around for eons. They're very experienced, knowledgeable. They're not fly-by-night or anything. They're the real deal.
And great resource for people that are wanting that. You know, Brenda's been on my show many times before. I'm always grateful for her being here. And she also usually mentions how people can get referrals if they need a counselor as well. We're not talking Spiritual Emergence Network, but if they're needing a counselor, because we've done great shows and I encourage you to look back at those. One was coping with anxiety. Another one was managing emotional overwhelm with techniques. And we've talked about spiritual psychology before, mediumship and the stages of grief. We talked about grief and hoarding. That was a really interesting one too. They've all been great shows. You can plug Brenda Hawkins in on my Facebook page or YouTube channel, and you can watch more of those shows that she's been on. And you do talk about how they can get counseling services, referral to counseling services.
Right. In fact, and I'm glad you're bringing that up. Okay, all of the different state psychological associations, they are components of APA, American Psychological Association. Each state component has their own free referral service. And the psychologist, when they're getting on the referral service, okay, they have to, say, what their training is, their experience, and then what areas of expertise they have. And in a number of the forms that I've seen, they do have spiritual psychology or transpersonal psychology. And so you would want to look for somebody who has that as an area too, in addition to the regular psychological areas.
So they just to refresh about that they if they're in New York State, would they just look up like New York State Psychological Association, or
go on their website?
Go onto that website, or if they're in another state, they can look up their state and Psychological Association. It'll usually have something like that.
Yeah, it's a free referral service. You can call them up, okay, and just say, I'm interested in getting a referral for counseling. And the person will ask you, do you prefer male or female therapists, so on and so forth? What areas are you interested in? and then they'll give you 3 referrals, and you
Mhm.
can talk to those 3 people, see how you feel about them.
Right.
Okay. And if those 3 don't seem to work for you, then you can call the association back up and get 3 more. It's a free service.
I think that's great that they can access that, and not just about spiritual emergence, but that understanding that those resources are there for them.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going through this alone, even when
Right,
you're moving,
right.
But I know our time is going so fast.
It
Are
is.
there some other points that you think would be really valuable for our viewers to know about spiritual emergence and mental health? Is anything else about psychosis versus imagination versus true spiritual experience that you think would be vital for people to understand?
Well, one resource I wanted to be sure to mention
Okay.
is reading about Kundalini, which
Mm-hmm.
is the energy that kind of triggers everything.
Mm-hmm.
And Lee Sanella has written a couple of books on Kundalini, what it is, how it works, what you might experience, what it's about. Okay. So I would recommend people reading those books. I read them. Oh, I imagine they're still in print. I read them decades ago. Okay. Because
Would
I
you
had to figure out what I was going through.
So that's Lee, Sanella,
Yeah.
Sannella.
Yeah.
And
SEN. I don't know if it's one N or 2 N's.
I got
ELA. Mm-hmm.
Sannella.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. His books are well written. Um, there's a minimum of jargon. It's all written in everyday words. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I found them both real helpful back in the day.
That's great. Yeah, because sometimes things are starting to stir,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're a strong empath or clairsentient. Things can really start to stir with all of that, and it's good if you have those resources that you can access. Just be patient with your process, but also consistent in
Yeah.
things, because that's a big part of this. And as you I just had as an observation, when somebody starts into the process of wanting to understand their mediumship and their healing more, as Brenda mentioned earlier, it can start to stir up other things. So that's
Mm-hmm.
the spiritual unfoldment part. So sometimes we have to do a bit of the climbing. You hit a plateau.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go, oh my gosh, I've hit a plateau or I've hit a wall, and you start doubting everything. Just give thanks for the fact that you hit a plateau for a little bit there
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
before you do your next climb, because sometimes we need to acclimate and let our mundane life catch up a little bit with what's going on in our spiritual life and
It's
attend to those things. So some people go through a life revolution as they're
mm-hmm.
becoming more spiritually aware, and um, so it can sometimes, not all times, please don't think this is going to happen to you. It can reset relationship, your career choices, where you live. A lot of things can happen to people. That didn't happen to me necessarily, but I've observed this long enough with other people and students, and that you want to get into a place of stability
Mm-hmm.
energetically as you're making these choices, and that you don't want to just feel like you're blown by the wind. You want to feel that you're truly being guided, and that you pass that through your soul. Ask your soul, is this in my highest and best good, yes or no? And
Mm-hmm.
that is a really important thing that I ask myself when I'm processing things in my own life, and that brings me clarity, so that I'm not just at war between head and heart, that I'm really getting centered in with what I can feel the divine is leading me toward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. In our spiritual journeys, there are times when uh, we feel like we've hit a plateau or we're in a void. That's why you'll find books written on what we call dark nights of the soul.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. And instead of getting overwhelmed or, questioning yourself, like, is this all in my mind? Am I losing my mind? Everything seems so bleak right now. It helps to know more about dark nights of the soul, and there are some good books out about it. Also, too, sometimes people will run into a space where I'm thinking back to a friend of mine, real gifted medium down south, and she said to me one time, I feel like I've lost contact with spirit. I feel like I'm a puppet and the strings have been cut.
Mm.
And, basically these times are times, like you were saying, of restabilizing. The thing is not to be afraid of them, recognize them for what they are. There's a purpose for them. When we're going through all of these energy shifts and changes and differences and awarenesses, we need those resting times.
Mm-hmm.
Where things are just stable, nothing's moving right now. And that may feel like being cut off. Okay, that's just our perception. We're never really cut off from spirit. And spirit's not jerking our strings either. Okay.
That's right.
So anyway, the important thing is to recognize what it is, accept it. Just like any journey, if you go on a car trip, for example, from New York to California, you can't keep your foot on the gas pedal all the time. You got to stop at the rest stops. You have to gas up the car. You have to go potty. You have to eat something, hopefully something fairly nutritious, walk the dog or take care of your fur babies if they're with you. Okay, you need those stopping points.
Yeah.
That's part of any journey, including the spiritual journey. So don't let it throw you when you have a dark night or you feel like you're in a void, because that's part of the growth process too. Dieters even talk about hitting plateaus, and that's because their bodies are having to adjust to the new weight. Metabolism is changing. So just acknowledge it. And again, like the Buddhists say, don't get attached to it.
That's true. That's very true. Those are excellent points, because as we are shifting vibrationally, we are changing as we're growing in our spirit. And there can be physical things that start to happen that can be sometimes challenging. We can be more sensitive to foods sometimes. We can feel like we're rubbed raw by other people that are around us. And as sensitives, if we start to go hypersensitive, we can become insensitive to others because it's just become too much. So this is where you want, as much as you can, help to have some buffer of time in your schedule so you're not around people. If you are going through an intense time and you can't get your timeouts that you really feel like you need, even if it's just like a few seconds of go take a gulp of air outside, read something, a devotional, or even a sentence or two that will be spiritually uplifting to you. Do those things, because that's spiritual food. And when you do spiritual work, you're more inclined to need the spiritual food so that you can help others through the process, so that you don't fall into resentment, so you don't fall into being irritable because you are more sensitive. And so, that's where it's really important to have those kind of survival strategies as empaths, so that you start to learn the difference of, what is me, and what is them. And instead of having a knee-jerk reaction, how to have a spiritual response to what is happening around you. So that comes with practice. That comes with you deciding you're going to be on the path of wisdom. Doesn't mean you always get it right. You're learning, but it just means that you really try to take that path as much as possible.
Exactly. It's real important to be able to recognize when you're getting into what I call input overload. And when you get that, and it's related to having good boundaries also. Yes. And when you feel like you're getting into input overload, like everything's feeling just too much, and maybe it's too much that you can't even sort out what is you, what is them, so on and so forth. Just let yourself know, hey, I'm in input overload right now. It's time for me to take a time out and do whatever feels good to you, whether it's going for a walk, taking a swim, watching cute little videos of puppies and kittens on TV, which is what I did one day because I needed just, okay, downtime now.
It's important. And, I would reference people back to that great show that Brenda came and did with me at another episode of managing emotional overwhelm. I mean, there were great techniques that Dr. Brenda Hawkins came on the show to share with us. So please use these things as the resources that they're meant to be. Know that, I've got quite a good library of episodes that you can watch to your heart's content. And I really hope that they help and bless you. And just know that you have those other resources that Brenda's been mentioning throughout the show that can assist you as well. But know that your own soul is your direct link to God, to the divine, to the infinite intelligence, and that it can show you the way. With practice, you'll start to understand what that true inner voice is.
And there's no rush. Take your own time. Don't push. Okay, spirit unfolds. As we say in Lilydale, everything in spirit's timing.
Divine right timing, divine right order.
Yeah, it's not like you're having to reach a certain goalpost and it's like, okay, if I work on this 15 hours a day instead of 2 hours a day, I can get there a whole lot faster. No, take your own time. It's not a race. Spirit is infinite, it's eternal, and so are our spirits.
I like to use the analogy of mashed potatoes. Instant mashed potatoes taste awful, in my opinion, just awful. Real mashed potatoes take time. There's all the cutting and the boiling and the ingredients added and everything, but then you're left with some really great, good tasting food. And so you have to know that we don't want to rush these processes, rush the fence, especially if you've been in pain about something. I know you want to get out of it as fast as you can. As Brenda was saying, you have to take one step at a time. And you will find the right resources for you. And you do have to become your own advocate with a lot of this, of course. But know that there are those resources. Wow.
Yeah. Use your resources and know that anything that is important always takes more time. For example, you can change your socks in the fraction of a second, but how important are our socks really? Whereas, spiritual development is like a major thing. Spirit's very important. So, yeah, we have to take our own time. No rushing.
Oh, well, thank you so much for being here today, Brenda. I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing from your wealth of knowledge and experience regarding spiritual emergence and mental health. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in today, or if you're watching on the replay, certainly appreciate you. Leave a great comment. Let us know that you appreciate the show, and so we can keep more coming to you so that we can educate you further and help you a bit further on the journey and make it a bit more enjoyable, perhaps, right?
Thanks for having me today. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, it's always great to have you here. And tune in next week for another great Wednesdays with Willa podcast show. My guest will be Laura Wooster, and she will be here to discuss with me mediumship student levels explained. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the difference between a psychic and mediumship link and so many other aspects related to the study of mediumship. So tune in next week and I'll catch you then. Same time, same place, 10 a.m. Eastern on my Facebook page, Willa White Medium. All right, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.